Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Bob Mendelsohn, and this is the Bob's Your Uncle podcast season 6, a special 8-day observance of the Feast of Tabernacles. I'm here in Sydney, and I want to share with you some of my thoughts from a couple years ago. I think they'll be significant for you in understanding what the holiday of Sukkot or Sukkot is all about. And I'm going to try to share with you some of my own story as well. And I think that you'll find it useful. This is day 2. It's the 18th of October. It's Friday. And it is a great day to remind ourselves. We talked about reminding yesterday. What's he going to talk about today? Stay tuned. And I hope you'll write me and give me some of your thoughts as well. This is sharing. All right. God bless you as you listen. Shalom, shalom. This is Bob Mendelsohn. I'm here in the Sukkah as we've decided that we're going to do this maybe every day so that you can feel like you're part of the Feast of Tabernacles wherever you live. And it's my privilege to be here and walk us through a bit of, today we're going to read from Ecclesiastes chapter 2, because every day we read from the book of Ecclesiastes during the Feast of Tabernacles to remind us that life is futile, to remind us that things are probably not the way they should be, to remind us that it's all temporary and not to put our hope in things that we say are permanent. People ask me, hey Bob, are you permanently a resident there in Australia? Well, I became a citizen many years ago here. We're dual citizens, my wife and me and the kids. But there's no such thing as, I don't think there's such a thing as permanent anything. That's maybe one of the greatest lessons of the Sukkah, this tabernacle in which we find ourselves, and that is that the things that we call permanent, they're impermanent. If you lived in Florida and you had a year ago booked a flight to Orlando, so you lived elsewhere, you flew to Orlando, Florida for your big trip, your family vacation, you were sure that that was coming, and then of course the hurricane came through last week and nothing was the same, and they even closed Disney World for the, I don't know when they've ever done that. So no, nothing is fixed. And we as Jews sit in the Sukkah every year reminding ourselves that we wandered for 4 decades, reminding ourselves that no, nothing is fixed. People talk about the difference between the tabernacle and the temple. Tabernacle was built in the time of Moses, 1500 BCE, and then David wanted to build a temple, couldn't, and so his son Solomon did. And Solomon dedicated the temple on the Feast of Tabernacles. That's pretty good. Now the temple was supposed to be a permanent structure, but of course you know that didn't last. In 586, 587 BCE, that temple was destroyed under Nebuchadnezzar and ruin, and then 7 decades later the Jewish people came back into country and began to rebuild in due course, and then that's permanent. But that wasn't permanent, because in 70 CE that temple was destroyed. We still don't have it. So tabernacle is designed to remind us of the impermanence of life, and it's one of my favorite. Maybe it's my favorite holiday, one because I get to build something that's designed to be a lean-to, everything I build leans, so it makes me as a not very good carpenter very comfortable. All right, well, I'm going to read for us from Ecclesiastes chapter 2, and I'm going to talk about Solomon's temple prayer later on. If we don't get to it today, we'll get to it tomorrow. So this Ecclesiastes 2, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure, so enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futility. I said of laughter, it's madness. And of pleasure, what does it accomplish? I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body. By the way, the Hebrew word there is lev, one of my grandson's names. I explored with my lev, with my heart, how to stimulate my body with wine, while my mind, again lev, was guiding me wisely, and how to take hold of folly, until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven the few years of their lives. I enlarged my works. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. This is King Solomon talking. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made ponds of water for myself, from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and I had home-born slaves. Also I possessed flocks and herds, larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem, which was really his dad, of course. He was boasting in that. Also I collected for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I provided for myself male and female singers and the pleasures of men, many concubines. Then I became great. No humility here. I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. So, verse 12, I turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness, and yet I know that one fate befalls them both. You hear the frustration within King Solomon? It doesn't matter what I do. All the glory, it's vanity. Why? Because if I'm even a fool, I've got wisdom, but even a fool has the same ending. I mean, this is one frustrated, trivial pursuer. That's really the way I see it. I said to myself in verse 15, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? In other words, what good is my academic career? What good is my PhD? What good is all my great learning? What good was all my pleasure, he said. I gave myself to all the bounty, and I had all this property, and I had all these lakes, and I had all these servants. Everything I had, okay, yeah, I had it all. Big deal. What was the point of it? It's vanity, that's what he says. For there is no lasting remembrance. The Hebrew is leolam, into eternity, or for the world. Olam is one of those great words in Hebrew that takes us to the edge, if you will. There's no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, as much as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die. So I hated life, Solomon says, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after wind. So here we are in the sukkah with the wind gently blowing here. I don't know if you can see, but it's gentle today. Usually in the course of an 8-day holiday, we cop a lot of rain and a lot of wind. We've got, let's see if I can show you, we've got all kinds of fruit and bamboo up here, and I don't want to lose connection. The birds are out, the traffic is out. I'm right on Pacific Highway here in Artarmon. It is a great time for us to ponder what God is saying to us. So from Ecclesiastes 2, what did we learn? We learned that everything under the sun, that's the phrase, which means humanly speaking, or in the human enterprise, everything naturally, we could say, is going to end in vanity. Everything's going to end in emptiness. That's the Hebrew word. That's frustrating. Now, don't be in a hurry to get to chapter 12. Ecclesiastes is a great book. You're in the basement, you're digging holes, and you continue to dig holes. But hang in there, because you can't get to the joy of redemption, or the joy of salvation, or the joy of knowing the real reason for life until you go through the depths of pain, the depths of unforgiveness, the depths of, it's all a big waste that Ecclesiastes highlights. So for me, I sit in here, I take my meals in here. This morning it was rock melon, or Americans call it cantaloupe, and listening to silence early this morning, pondering, reminding myself, as we talked about yesterday, the Sukkah is a great place to say, yeah, I don't have it all together. I don't have the whole world sorted. I need to ponder something bigger than me, because everything I've given myself to, the trivial pleasures, as my old friend who passed away many years ago, Ernie Gruen, used to say, Ecclesiastes is about trivial pursuits. The game had just come out when he was preaching, and I thought, that is exactly right. But one person's academic career is not trivial, it's fantastic. Even so, we have to humbly admit that wisdom, folly, riches, poverty, they all end alike. We all go to a grave. So what are you going to make of your life today? That's what the preacher, Ecclesiastes, wants us to ponder while we sit in the Sukkah. Now, you know this is the month Simchatenu, the time of our rejoicing, the time of our happiness. You think, how am I happy reading Ecclesiastes? Is it because I know the end of the story? For those of us who do, that's probably why we can do this. We take our time, almost like a symphony, almost like Bolero. Do you remember that? Maurice Ravel's great work, and how slow and steady and rhythmic it is, and then it bursts. So Ecclesiastes is about slow and steady, and then it's going to burst. And where does it burst? Not under the sun, not in human enterprise, not in human accomplishments, not in the pleasures of life that Solomon gave himself to. How many hundreds of wives, how many hundreds of concubines did he have? I mean, how many mothers-in-law did he have? How do you call that anything but pleasure? But even pleasure has an ending, and you have to re-pleasure yourself. You have to give yourself more pleasure, more houses, more timber. That's what he's saying, that all of this, it has its purpose. But if that's where you're focusing, it's a trivial pursuit. Well, that's what I'm thinking of today. Maybe you want to put in the comments here on Facebook, put in your comments what you've seen from Ecclesiastes chapters 1 and 2. Don't be in a hurry to get to 12. Live in the slow measure of Bolero, if you will, and slow and steady, and sadness and the pain of his saying, what's the point? What's the point? Get to that moment of what's the point, and you'll start looking for the real answer. And I guess you know what I think Those of you who know me know that I think that Yeshua is the answer. Yeshua is the one who's forgiven me my sins. That's what I celebrated on Yom Kippur last Wednesday. That's what I celebrate every day of my life. No, my answer is not in human enterprise. It's not what's glorious and, what does he say? Because everything is futility and striving after wind. Yeah, get there, and then you'll look for something better. I had an old friend in Lawrence, Kansas. Her name was Helen Quakenbush. She died, I think, before I even left town. No, maybe not. Anyway, Helen was a little old lady, and I used to drive her places in her car that she wanted me, I guess, driving Miss Daisy. That was kind of the point. She was a lovely little old lady, and she was falling sick once in a while. And I went to visit her one day, and she said, "You know, Bob, when I'm lying flat on my back, the only way I can look is up, and God's got me." And she had a perspective on life that I think the preacher here of Ecclesiastes certainly had. No, when I strive after the wind, I get only what I get, but there's something more. But live on a flat back, if you will. Live for a while there and look up and see what God has to say to you. Well, I wish you a joyful Festival of Tabernacles today. This is day 2, and tomorrow we'll read the famous song, Turn, 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 right? We'll read that. There's a time for everything, and see what that has to say to us. And I'll show you the lulav and the etrog, and I'll show you a little more of the sukkah itself. Thanks for being with me. Shalom.
So that's it. Day 2. Tell me what you think. You could comment to me on the Bob's Your Uncle podcast on Facebook. You could email me, bobmendo@aol.com. That's old school. That'd be fine. Instagram, wherever you're listening, wherever you're participating with us. I'd value that. And I hope that you'll ponder your life and process that for yourself, even today. Hey, have a great rest of the day. Talk to you tomorrow. Shalom.